Room 442 is brought to you by North Star Bets. That's a win.
After a week of turmoil, drama, and controversy, TFC pick up a statement win at BMO Field, beating DC United 2-1. I'm Sarah Pariah. This is Mikey saying, Mikey, last week was incredible for TFC in all sense of that word. Just, there were stories coming out. There were players being benched. They lost a game. Like, there was so much going on. I felt that every day we were hearing more and more, and we kept relying on you to, bring us the info and bring us the news. And then after all of that, they won their home game on Saturday night. How important was that win for these guys?
Yeah, just a normal week in Toronto FC land. How important was that win? Oh, it was so important, because had they dropped yet another game at home to DC United, a game that we mentioned, it was going to be tough, but also very winnable for this team. Had they gone out and not put in the performance that they did, it could have got really messy post-game. As we all know, as you mentioned, it's been such a tough week for this team, both, on the field, losing that game to Austin, the last minute, to some of the stuff that transpired afterwards, to some of the stuff that's come out since. It's been a week that I think we'll remember for a very long time. So for them to go out and put in that performance was so important.
Yeah, let's go back to Friday for a moment and talk about kind of everything that happened then, because Friday was insanity. We found out through you went to training, you came back to the studio, and you said, all right, Bernardeschi's being benched. Bob Bradley has made the decision to basically bench TFC's best player this season. Okay. Maybe moments later, The Athletic releases the article. Is the only way. The article in what was kind of like a behind the scenes, a bit of a tell-all, what's been going on with TFC recently, especially involving Bernardeschi and Insigne, but also what's kind of transpired over the past couple years there. A lot was said.
A lot was said, for sure. And yeah, give a quick shout out to Paul Tenorio, Josh Cloak, and Tom Bogert for being able to get access and tell those stories, because, I've heard a couple of those stories. I don't know if I can confirm them, but I've heard the same stories. Some of the stuff I obviously haven't heard. So for them to be able to piece that together and illustrate what, as you said, what's been going on for quite some time at this club, I thought it was really well done. And I guess my take on it is that as bad and as damning as some of the stuff that was in that story was, it could actually be a good thing that this has come out. And the reason being is I think it adds a little bit extra need for accountability on the team, because not only, behind the scenes are Bob Bradley and his coaching staff and everyone else in management there having to deal with some of these issues, now it's gone to the public eye. And I think in that dressing room, based on some of the stories that we're hearing, there's probably some people in that dressing room that probably care a little bit more now because it's gone public, and they have to do a little bit extra to restore the image that was not only themselves personally, but also, Toronto FC as well. So I actually think, because of the way the season was winding down and how we kept on saying, it's really tough to see the light at the end of the tunnel for this team, this one big bombshell, I guess we'll call it, could actually end up being a good thing for this team. And we saw them rally. Lorenzo Insigne, speaking to him after the match, he said it was really important for the team to stick together. I think that's what you saw, I guess, on the weekend, because they put in a really good team performance.
Well, not to mention, you just said you spoke to Lorenzo Insigne for the first time this season. Lorenzo spoke to the media. I will say the performance itself was a really good performance. Nothing to take away from the team there. They knew they needed to win that game. They knew they needed to band together, and they did. But there are a lot of pieces being, I think, put into play here. All of a sudden, Lorenzo Insigne is now available for media. Bernardeschi, on the other hand, who was obviously benched, but he's there shaking everyone's hands, waving and smiling. I don't believe it, but I think they knew what they had to do. And I'm just curious to now see, okay, what's going to happen now? Everything's come out. all the dirty laundry has been aired. You know, you're obviously putting these guys in a certain place to be like, yeah, now all of a sudden, like I said, you can talk to Insigne. But I'm curious to see now, all right, are you guys going to get over it? Are you guys going to sort it out and fix it and make that locker room a way better environment? Or is this going to linger for a bit?
Yeah, and that's why I said the accountability part, because you're absolutely right. Let's talk about Lorenzo Insigne for a second. Lorenzo Insigne put in the most inspired performance I've ever seen him put in a Toronto FC shirt to date. Not only was he tracking back defensively, there's one play in the second half where Kobe Franklin pinched up to his runner and then another guy went in behind, and Lorenzo Insigne for a second was kind of just watching his runner, and then I see him, track back and pick, take it upon himself to ensure that the team was in a good position. We saw that at certain moments throughout the game. Another time, he just had like this will and desire to maintain possession, keep going, and battle through everything that was, thrown at him. We haven't seen that will and desire out of Lorenzo Insigne in a very long time, if ever, in a TFC shirt. So you can tell there was a little bit of an extra chip on his shoulder. He was so engaged in that game, and if that's the type of player that like TFC can get, if that is the Lorenzo Insigne TFC can get week in, week out, this team will actually be in a really good spot, because we know just how much of a difference maker he can be if he cares.
Well, I think the thing is, between him and Bob Bradley, the pressure was on, especially Bernardeschi not playing this game. Lorenzo wanted to be that guy. He wanted to be the star, and he wanted to perform, especially because Fede wasn't there. So he really stepped up to the plate. I think if he didn't, a lot of attention would go to him. And also, if they lost that game, I'm not sure if we'd be saying Coach Bob Bradley this morning. I'm really uncertain. Like, I was shocked when he made that decision to bench Bernardeschi, and I was thinking, if you lose this game, you might not be here on Monday. I know you're like quite confident in that he's probably going to stick around for a bit, but at what point, if this is obviously theoretical, but it was a gutsy decision he made, and it paid off. But I know I also saw your social media videos of when the team came out and the boos Mr. Bradley was getting. Like, it was obvious.
Yeah, it's clear. And before we get into that a little bit, just back to the Lorenzo thing quickly. He wasn't paid in a really good light in that article either. No,
not at all. But that's why I think he knew what he had to do. He was like, they're not happy with me, especially because at least I think Bernardeschi overall this season he's been playing, which is more than you can say about Lorenzo, but he has been trying. He's been, leaving it on the pitch. There have been games where they aren't as good, but especially, the first 5-6 games of the season, he was prominent. Yeah. So I think that was the thing with Lorenzo. He knew, I've not even been on the pitch. If I don't show up today, after that on Friday, this is not going to go well for me.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, that's probably part of the reason why he put in such a great shift. Hopefully this is what will be to come. But going back to Bob Bradley and his decision there to bench Federico Bernardeschi, we're talking in hindsight, but again, I use the word accountability. That for a coach to be able to do that and say, you know what, you're not going to be playing, you've arguably been our best attacker this season. We're a team that's deprived of goals, but you know what you did wasn't right. You're not going to be playing this game. We need to set a tone. We need to set a culture. Despite the fact he is clearly on the hot seat, clearly feeling frustration from the fan base, knew it would be a really unpopular decision, but for him to hold his ground like that and then get the rest of his team to still rally and put in the performance that they did, I think that speaks volumes. I know the narrative before the game after reading that article was that Bob Bradley's completely lost the dressing room. I think that performance that you saw on Saturday night, I think it does say otherwise. I think there are still a lot of players in that room that will want to play for Bob Bradley, and if he can get, it's funny, in that article it painted Insigne and Bernardeschi as the guys who want Bradley out of the club. I almost think Bradley's future relies on both of those guys at this club, so it's pretty ironic. So if he can find a way to get those guys back bought in, I think this team could potentially, start to live up to some of those expectations before the season. Yeah,
I mean, listen, those are your two star players. Of course, Bob Bradley has to get them behind him and, rally together. I think, like I said, we talk about TFC sometimes, like, theoretically, and what could have happened. And if they lost this game, I'm happy they didn't, because I think they really needed a win. But that leads me to my next question. They are playing a midweek game this week against Chicago. against one Jurgen Shaqiri. I think my thing is now, okay, good, you guys got the win, but you guys also haven't had any consecutive wins this season yet. So what are we looking at going into Wednesday's game after all the turmoil and all that, and then the win? They got to get another win is how I'm looking at it. Like, if they, I don't want to see another draw. If they lose, I mean, forget about it. But it's still really important for them to get that second win now and keep it going.
Yeah, definitely. I think Mark Anthony Kay, speaking to him after the game, what he said is that win on Saturday doesn't fix all of TFC's problems. Nowhere close to that. So you're right. They have to not only follow up what they did on Saturday, they got to put in another performance and then another performance. It's not going to be okay, because if this team falls back to what it's been before Saturday, then I think even those, let's call them bruise, frustration, whatever you want, before the game, are going to be even louder from the fan base. I guess the biggest question for me that I have, do you think Federico Bernardeschi slots back in on Wednesday automatically? Because DeAndre Kura came in and he put in a really good shift, slotting in for Bernardeschi on the right wing, obviously had the first goal for TFC. Do you think it's automatic that Bernardeschi gets back into this TFC 11?
1,000%. Listen, DeAndre Kura, great performance, as you said. He hasn't been 100% this season. It's good to see him building the confidence, having that connection with Insigne. But we're talking about Federico Bernardeschi, Italian national team, former Juventus player. This is one of your best players. This is your best player of the season for sure, but also what you've paid for him and what you know he can do in Europe. There's not a question. Like, if Bob Bradley doesn't start him, I think it would be an ego thing at that point. He just wants to show his dominance over Bernardeschi, and I don't think he's that dumb. This is Bernardeschi. You play him. And that's the thing. DeAndre Kura then becomes a really good sub to have on the bench, that if it's not working, hey, 60, 65 minute, then you can bring him in. But I don't think you bench Fede again.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, he's as good as DeAndre Kura was. Federico Bernardeschi is definitely a lot better. I will say Kura does add a little bit different element to TFC than Bernardeschi gives, and makes them probably a little bit better defensively. Now, how much that actually matters to the team when you have a game breaker like Bernardeschi, that's up to Bob Bradley to decide. But I'm with you. I think Bernardeschi does get back in. It will send a message that, he's back, bought into the team. And they'll send, I think, just the right message throughout the fan base. And yeah, we talk about off the bat how important it was for them to get that win. It was even more important because of what was going on with Bernardeschi.
Yeah, exactly. Really quickly, Brendan Cervania came off looking like he maybe picked up a little something. Any news on that?
Not yet. We'll see. I don't think it's anything too major, but we'll see. But yeah, not great news for as this team starts to get healthy, more guys go down. That's just, again, just bad luck.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, TFC back in action Wednesday at BMO Field against the Chicago Fire, and the pressure is on.
Room 442 is brought to you by North Star Bets. That's a win.